Good morning and welcome to my YouTube channel, everybody. If you're watching recently, you may have seen me do a layout design for a customer in Australia. Well, this week we'll be doing another layout design, but right around the world, this time in the south of England. The layout site in this situation is a purpose-built outbuilding at the customer's home. Inside dimensions are approximately 18.5 by 14.5 feet. And although that is a reasonable size for an HO scale layout, when I got the list of requirements from him, my first reaction was, well, that's going to be impossible. He wanted so many different things in it. And also everything needed to be on a fairly large scale. He has some huge locomotives, including big boys, gas turbines, one of Union Pacific's 8-axle diesels. I think it's the DDAXC or something like that, about 100 feet long. And he had numerous long passenger trains that he wanted. So big curves were necessary. We talked about curve radius and decided that we were going to aim for a 33-inch minimum. I started off coming up with a few footprints for him. Also in this plan you can see this white area around these two sides. The customer had already started building benchwork before he contacted me, and he was hoping to reuse it. He said it wasn't the end of the world if he had to tear that out and start again, but for the time being I drew it in to keep it in mind. And we can see here that with the double track main and 33-inch radius curves, we really end up with not a lot of space here or here. So turning around on a peninsula doesn't look like it's going to be feasible. The idea with this one was that we'd wrap it twice around, put the helix here, and then a lift bridge across this area. I came up with a couple of other footprints as well. A basic folded dog bone. This one I tried to see if I could get one of the lobes down the center, and it really doesn't work. We're way too narrow here. And then this one here with a basic oval and a helix in the corner, just to see if that would work. Of all the footprints, we thought this one probably had the most potential. So I started working around this one. It took me several attempts to get something workable. This one here is labeled Plan 5. You can see how it's based on the last one I showed you, but with some twisting involved. I tried to get all his main operation on this level. Passenger terminal, freight yard in front. He already had a 6-stall engine house and 130-foot turntable which he wanted to incorporate. I didn't ever think of this one as being ideal. Now this is just the main level, intended to be at around 44 inches up. And this would have been the upper deck, accessed by a helix, and then the track would run around, continuing upgrade all the time, except for it passes the small town. And then by the time it's gone around the room twice, it's high enough to cross over the top of the door without getting in the way, ending up at what I call the sky staging. Now there were two beams across his room from north to south, dividing it into 3 sections, and the track level here is 4.5 inches below those beams. So just room for the trains to run under them, whereas you've still got about a foot of headroom to pop up between the beams for maintenance. Now going back to the main level, in this corner, see I've got stacked helixes. The one helix goes up to the level that I showed you, the other one goes down to the lower staging level, the main staging yard. He wanted a couple of tall trestles if possible, and I figured that although this is mainly a staging level, there's room for a couple of scenic areas with deep canyons that can go all the way to the floor if he wants to. One tall curved trestle can go here, and it's also possible to herniate the bottom lap of the helix to take one or both tracks out through another canyon seen here. Now I sent this off to the customer, and a couple of days later a response came back to the effect of I had done the impossible for him. He really didn't think I was going to be able to get in everything he wanted. But he wasn't sure whether he really liked it. He felt it might have been too much. And also at this point he told me about another part of the building which never came into the thinking process up until now. in this corner here, there is a long, narrow storage room, and he asked if it would make sense to annex that to the layout. So I went away and I gave it some more thought. This one here is labelled Plan 8. Here is the annex. It's about 13 feet by around 4.5. Originally he asked if we could just cut holes through the wall and put a staging yard in here. But further discussion determined that the best thing to do with it was to take the whole wall out and make it part of the main room. This corner down here is where his hot tub is, and he did comment at one point that he should have just made the whole rectangle his train room. And I'm inclined to agree with that. It would have made the layout design a whole lot easier. You could have got a lot more in. Another thing that he didn't like about the other plan is that he felt the helix was taking up too much space, and he wondered if it would be possible to reduce the curve radius. We did some experiments using his bigger locomotives, and he found that they would all negotiate a 30-inch radius curve quite satisfactorily, although some of his passenger cars needed 32 inches. So we were only able to reduce minimum radius by 1 inch. And also at this time he gave me a little more information about his passenger trains, and it turns out that he has a 14-foot long Empire builder. So he asked me if it was possible to have at least one track in the terminal 14 feet long. And I thought that using this long, narrow annex for a stub-ended terminal, that would probably be doable. So this plan, labelled number 8, is what came out of it. Because the continuous circuit is basically not much more than a circle, and the long trains are going to quickly bite their own tails, I tried to increase the running distance by putting this spiral loop in, just so the trains can disappear from view and the viewer can lose track of them, even though it took up a little bit more space. And we went to a single track 32-inch radius helix in the corner, so it takes up less space than it did before. So this is the main level, which is all urban, and then we have the upper level, which is all open scenery, and we have a stub-ended staging track over the top of the passenger terminal, and then also there is room for a second staging yard underneath it. So we still have the end-to-end run, starting at lower staging, coming up through the middle of the layout, through the city area, and then up through the helix to the upper deck. We managed to get another independent continuous run on this level, and then this is basically a twice round plan, coming up the helix, making 1.5 laps of the room, and then ending up in the upper staging. Anyway, the customer looked at this one for quite a while before deciding that he didn't like this one either. And at this point he was beginning to despair about ever being able to get the layout he wanted into the room that he had. But one of the comments that I made in the narrative that I sent with this plan led him to start thinking of other alternatives outside the box. I mentioned that either of the two main levels with appropriate staging could function without the other. So he started thinking, well, can we combine it on just a single scenic level? So we started looking into that idea. So with that in mind, this is what I came up with. I took the passenger terminal with all its subsidiary facilities and the industrial area from the main level, and then tried to see what I could possibly do with open scenery in the little bit of space that was left. Also at about this time he said he wanted to be able to put a workbench under part of the layout, and since the middle of the room is only a single deck, there's space for a nice big workbench diagonally across the middle of the room. And with that in mind, I tried to open out this aisle as much as possible so that he had enough space to sit around without being cramped. Anyway, the customer decided that this plan had enough potential to start developing it in detail. And this is what it came out like. The passenger terminal is 6 tracks wide, which is actually more than I thought I would get in. There's also a short private business car set-out track, 4 express docks, a track serving the post office. There's a 3-track coach yard with a capacity of 21 full-length cars and 6 more in the commissary. The engine terminal has all the features that one could possibly want. he's got a 6-stall roundhouse and his 130-foot turntable he already had. He's already built it up with the machine shop on this end. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit that way. He's going to have to modify it to put the machine shop on the other end. And there's also room to add the power plant, which is well worthwhile because it needs deliveries of coal. So it's also another industry to switch. He already has his coaling tower designed to serve 3 tracks. So I've got all 3 service tracks in there and a coal delivery track. Behind that, there's a fuel oil delivery track for the diesels, the 3-stall diesel house. And in front, 1 track serving the sand house and the ash plant. The entry into the passenger terminal allows for 2 parallel independent routes, as is pretty much necessary for a busy terminal to look right. The cost of that is that the plan requires 7 double slips, so it is quite complicated. Around here into the industrial area is a substandard curve. It's only going to be served by local freights, so either a 280 or a 4-axle diesel. Curve radius here is down to 27 inches, which is still plenty big enough for the trains to serve it. And there's a good number of industries in here to serve, some of them being fairly large because there's room to put them against the backdrop where they can be made to look a lot bigger than they really are. I was able to use up some of his bridges, not all by any means. He has a huge double-track truss bridge that he's just finished building from a kit, and that goes in here. A double-track steel viaduct across a lake, which is another feature that he liked from a layout that I did a couple of years ago in California, where there was a trestle across a lake, and he liked that feature. And then room to put a tall single-track trestle in here, either steel or timber. I've drawn it as a steel trestle because I already had the icon for it. Trains come up from staging, join the main line, go around the room, and then can go back down to staging through the other route. And by ignoring the continuous cut-off under the bridge here, you can actually run point to point on this layout. Because of the number of trains he has, we wanted to get the possibility of 2 staging levels in. Here is the middle level. We can see the track, the 2 routes join on the lift bridge, make a single lap of a helix, diverge here, and the outer track on this curved turnout leads to a 9-track staging yard with a reverted loop for turning trains. And then the helix continues down 3 more laps to a second, almost identical staging yard. And on each level I've shown where there can be optional additional locomotive storage. Well, anyway, I really thought this was project finished. But then I heard back from him a couple of weeks later, and there was some things that he didn't like about it still. He wasn't sure whether he would like the double-sided backdrop dividing the room across here. So he did a full-size mock-up in his training room. And what he didn't like about it is that a good portion of the continuous loop was out of sight wherever he stood in the room. And actually, I thought that was a benefit because it disguises the fact that trains are chasing their tails. But he felt that he really wanted to be able to see them throughout the circuit. So the double-sided backdrop had to go. And we talked about the possibility of, instead of having this section divide the room into 2 aisles, have the main line continue around the front, and then put the industrial area on a kind of an island. So we played around with that idea for a while and came up with this. So the passenger terminal is still untouched, but the track goes around the front with a small peninsula in the middle. He did ask about the possibility of getting another industrial area in here, but the problem with that was that we have to make the benchwork wider, and every inch we add here has to come off the length of the main industrial area, and that was already plenty short enough. So he accepted my suggestion that we abandon this and just allow this scene to be all open country. It also meant that we could get another river valley in and use up more of his bridges, because he had a lot of bridge kits available and he wanted to use as many as possible. Also, by this time, I had redesigned the end of the passenger terminal to put his Union Station across the tracks instead of on the diagonal. I have a detailed view of that somewhere. Here it is. It's drawn the size that I was given for this structure kit, although it turned out after he built it that it's bigger than I thought it was, meaning that it doesn't quite fit in this location. So I suggested that we turn it around 90 degrees and had it parallel with the tracks, either stopping 3 of the tracks short and running 3 long, or building it up on a higher level above the tracks. So I'll get back to that in a moment. Now, because we no longer have the central benchwork coming out to allow this route through the middle of the room back to staging, it has to come along here, ramping down in front of the engine terminal instead. But that doesn't really make any difference. Schematically, it's the same. So anyway, at this point, the customer thought that we were getting close. So I started filling in the blanks on this one. And here we have what may be the final version of the layout. The peninsula is still not in its final form. The track arrangements here are just showing the sort of arrangements that are possible. I even showed him how we could combine 2 number 6 turnouts with the Atlas 19-degree crossing to have 2 spurs cross each other if we wanted to. All the turnouts at this end are the Pico curve turnouts, and everything else is straight number 5s and 6s. Since this will be the very last part of the layout built, it makes sense not to waste time designing it in any more detail at this point, because more than likely he will change his mind by the time he gets to it anyway. This corner shows what the Union Station might look like above the tracks. 1 track in the front stopping short, long enough for a local train, about 5 cars long, and then 5 tracks going underneath it for his mainline trains. In this corner I've shown an option of covering over the access hole. Originally I'd just drawn it with structure walls circling it and an open hatch, but it can actually be built as a full city block and lifted up, possibly on linear motors for emergency access to the back. I've drawn the scenery in here. We've got this extra river valley here with a timber trestle in the back and the steel viaduct in front of it. We did briefly consider putting plate girder approach spans to his big truss, but they didn't quite fit. It made the area look too cramped, and also the track spacing wasn't quite the same, and he only had 1 anyway. We'd have had to have found a second one. So I suggested cutting the plate girders off, shortening them slightly, discarding the floor system, and using them to build a ballasted deck truss bridge over a highway here. So this plan uses all but 1 of his bridges, and we get a grade crossing in as well, which we never had before. The 2 tracks that head down to staging, instead of joining on the visible portion of the layout, they join back here at the back of the helix. Now, although there's not a lot of vertical clearance, it's right under these 2 structures here. So if that little piece of the city is made removable, you can stand in the main access hatch and get to that turnout for maintenance quite easily. Now, with this new design, the double slip that was in this location leading to the industrial park has been relocated over here. Ideally, in this situation, it should be only a single slip because this crossover here does nothing. But single slips are just not available commercially. Although, having said that, I don't believe number 8 double slips are available either anymore. Walthers are no longer producing theirs. And although they're supposed to be re-releasing their range of turnouts, the date has been put back several times now, so there's no real idea of when they're going to be available, and the double slips are no longer even listed. Now, it's not a problem for this customer. He was able to find enough for this layout, but it's quite possible that they are the last ones available anywhere. And since I cannot in good conscience continue to incorporate double slips in layout designs unless I can be sure they're still available, I've just purchased the number 8 double slip jig from Fast Tracks, and I've started building them. And by the time this video goes live, they should already be available on my website, superiormodelrailroads.com. Well, at the moment, I am assuming that this plan is the final version, so I'm just going to wind up this video now and sign off. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and found it useful or informative, and I hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.